How did war transform daily life into a state-controlled routine? And why did people accept it so readily? This is the making of Britain, the story of how land, law and power shaped an island. In each episode, we trace a turning point that changed what Britain was and what it would become, the Britain that we know today. On the morning of the 3rd of September 1939, radios across Britain crackled with the words of Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. This country is at war with Germany. Within hours, a new law swept through Parliament, the Emergency Powers Defence Act. And overnight, the British state claimed powers that reached into every kitchen, every factory, and every field. The Emergency Powers Defence Act of 1939 was rushed through Parliament in a single day, one day. Imagine that. No months of debate, no committee wrangling, no endless second readings, just urgency. The Act gave the government sweeping authority to regulate industry, property, communications, and even personal behaviour. Suddenly, ministers could dictate how factories ran, what farmers planted, and how much bread you were allowed to eat. Individual liberty shrank, and the collective effort to win the war expanded. Britain became, in the words of historian A.J.P. Taylor, the most completely controlled society in history. But what did that actually look like for ordinary people? Let's step into the world of blackout curtains, ration books, and government leaflets. One of the first changes was immediate, the blackout. Every street lamp extinguished, every window covered. Even the smallest chink of light could draw an air raid. Imagine being a factory worker in Birmingham, cycling home at night. You've got no street lights, no car headlights, and only a faint glimmer of stars to guide you. The number of road accidents soared in those first weeks. Civil liberties may have been dimmed, but ankles were twisted in record numbers. The blackout was more than safety, it was symbolic. The government could now tell you how to live in your own home, when to pull the curtains, when to douse a fire, even what colour paint to use on your front door. Then came rationing. Bacon, butter, sugar, all carefully weighed and issued by ration book. By 1940, you couldn't simply stroll into a shop and buy as much tea as you liked. The Ministry of Food decided. At first, people grumbled, who wouldn't? But rationing had unexpected upsides. For one, nutrition actually improved for much of the working class. Obesity dropped, child health improved, and diets became more balanced. Here's a question for you. If you had to live on a wartime ration, a single egg a week, 2 ounces of butter, what would you miss the most? Pop your thoughts in the comments. Would it be bacon sandwiches, cake, or just the simple pleasure of sugar in your tea? The Emergency Powers Act also transformed work. The government could direct labour wherever it was needed. If you were a skilled engineer, you might be moved from a car plant to an aircraft factory. Farmers were told what crops to grow and when. The line between civilian and soldier blurred. Dilution schemes brought women into heavy industry, and men previously deemed unskilled were retrained. The idea of a reserved occupation meant that even if you wanted to enlist, the state could say no. Sorry lad, we need you mining coal, not carrying a rifle. This wasn't just about war production. It was about reshaping society. For many women, this was their first taste of financial independence and skilled work, experiences that would ripple long after 1945. The Emergency Powers Act also gave birth to the Ministry of Information. Its job to keep morale up, crush rumours and ensure the public heard exactly what the government wanted them to hear. That's how we got posters like "Careless talk costs lives" and the now famous "Keep calm and carry on." Interestingly, "Keep calm" was never widely distributed during the war. It was rediscovered decades later in a second-hand bookshop. Yet today, it's plastered on mugs, tea towels, and used to sell everything from gin to garden furniture. The ministry also controlled the press. Newspapers faced censorship. Radio was tightly managed, and even films were vetted. It was wartime, but Britain was in effect living under a kind of soft propaganda state. Government power seeped into every part of daily life. Travel permits restricted movement. Building materials were commandeered for the war effort. Even clothing was rationed, not just for fabric, but for style. The famous utility clothing line was introduced, plain, functional, and carefully measured. And then there was the Dig for Victory campaign. Parks, gardens, and even the lawns outside the Tower of London were turned into allotments. The state didn't just tell you what you couldn't eat, it encouraged you to grow what you could. Yet the story isn't simply one of restrictions. People adapted. Some found pride in their contributions. Others found humour, like the man fined for painting his cow's horns white so he could see them in the blackout. Here's the paradox. The Emergency Powers Act stripped away freedoms, yet many Britons felt more united, more purposeful, and more equal than before. The state might ration butter, but it also rationed privilege. For the first time, rich and poor queued in the same line for the same cheese. This wartime sense of shared sacrifice planted seeds for the welfare state and followed. The Beveridge Report of 1942 and eventually the creation of the NHS in 1948. The same government that told you how much sugar you could eat also promised your healthcare from cradle to grave. The war ended in 1945, but the state didn't simply snap back. Rationing continued into the 1950s. Bread was rationed for the first time in 1946, long after the fighting stopped. Emergency powers were gradually wound down, but not entirely. The precedent had been set. In times of crisis, the state could expand, and people would accept it. That legacy echoes in the later moments, from Cold War civil defence plans to anti-terror legislation to pandemic lockdowns. So when Britain entered World War II on the 3rd of September 1939, it wasn't just a declaration of war, it was the beginning of a vast social experiment, one where freedom was traded for security, where government reached into the home, the factory, and even the garden. And yet, people carried on. They kept calm, they queued, they made do. And in that strange blend of control and resilience, Britain remade itself. Thank you for walking a little further down the road that made Britain with me. The story winds on. Try this one. I think you'll like it. Until then, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you very soon.